The Health Marketing Collective is powered by Imprella, a communications firm built for health brands determined to lead, not follow. We partner with marketing innovators who aren't just chasing attention, they're building movements. Connect with the audiences shaping the future of care and lead the conversations that move your market. Ready to rise above the noise? Visit Imprella.com. That's INPRELA.com. Let's create something that moves the market.
Welcome back to the Health Marketing Collective, where strong leadership meets marketing excellence. I'm your host, Sara Payne. Today, we're talking about something that's on the minds of a lot of marketing leaders, AI. AI can now write blog posts, marketing emails, social posts, and do it at massive scale. So it raises an important question, one that's on marketing leaders' minds. If AI can produce content at scale, what actually makes humans valuable? My guest today argues that the answer is storytelling, and that storytelling is a uniquely human skill. He believes it will become the most important professional skill in the AI age. Joe Lazer is the author of the new book, Super Skill: Why Storytelling is the Superpower of the AI Age. His research and writing on the science of storytelling has been featured in Fast Company, Forbes, Adweek, and Digiday. He's also the Chief Marketing Officer at Pepper. Joe, welcome to the show.
Sara, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thrilled to have you here, just coming off this newly released book. Let's start right in with the anxiety that's on everyone's minds. That anxiety about AI replacing jobs, especially in the marketing and creative fields. Your argument, Joe, is almost the opposite, that the rise of AI actually makes storytelling more valuable than ever. And why is that?
Yeah, so maybe I can answer that by telling a story myself of my own anxieties. When ChatGPT came out, like it was this seismic moment, especially for us. Like it was in my Slack immediately, and I was like, okay, we're always sharing new AI tools. But the anxiety really hit for me a couple weeks after it was released when my son was born. And as I dug into it, you had all these people on LinkedIn professing these doomsday prophecies that AI was going to wipe out the creative class, that it would soon replace all content teams, all marketing teams, all writers, that this skill set that I had spent my career developing would soon be obsolete. It makes a lot of sense that that was the initial reaction, right? At the time, writing was the first use case that we experienced in with generative AI. And so, like a lot of people I was sent after AI came out into this sort of existential panic, was I, as a new dad with a mortgage to pay, looking at a future career where I would soon be obsolete. And so I do what I tend to do as a trained journalist, is sort of dug into trying to find the answer. And I was really lucky working at A Team, which was this future of work AI company. So this question of what skills would be most valuable in the next stage of work was very fundamental to what we did. And so I launched this generative AI salon series in New York to try and understand where this technology was headed and what was the most likely outcome. And towards the kind of midpoint of 2023, I came to this realization that a couple of things were going to happen, which is one is that so much of this AI slop would start flooding the web that it would drive down the cost of creating mediocre content to zero, right? But in turn, the value of that mediocre content would also approach zero. And that in turn would very likely create a premium or actually surplus value for people who could tell deeply human stories that sounded nothing like AI and that were authentically human. And the second thing that I came to realize in talking in the AI research labs is that based on how AI is trained and also the economic incentives around it, it was much more likely that AI would get rapidly better at technical skills like coding and data analysis versus content and storytelling, which has a much more kind of subjective viewpoint on what good is. It requires taste. And so, with these two factors at play, one, AI slop flooding the web, AI getting better at technical skills, um, the dynamic that would play out, I realized, was that storytelling, which acts as this core technology for us building relationships with other human beings, which is a thing that AI won't be able to do, even if it gets 10 times or 100 times better, right? Because AI can do all the work, but can it rally six different stakeholders around a vision, ram through a plan, build that relationship, that enterprise client? Those are the things that would be most valuable in the next stage of work. And from a marketing storytelling perspective, the ability to stand out from AI to create truly exceptional human content would go up in value because it'd be the only way to break through in this age of endless slop. And so when I first kind of came up with the idea for the book and started pitching it, people thought I was crazy because that was completely counter to the narrative at the time, which is that AI would completely replace creatives and writers. I think now we are just coming into this point where uh, the people are coming more around to that viewpoint, right? We've seen the viral Wall Street Journal article that laid out that the roles for storytellers had doubled in the last year. We see, you know, the makers of these AI models, OpenAI and Anthropic, opening up hundreds of storytelling roles that pay 400, 500K plus in total comp. Because even they realize that these tools, while powerful, without being put in the hand of a great storyteller with strong taste, uh, aren't actually that effective to creating anything that's going to build connection and resonate emotionally with other human beings.
Yeah, no, love that. Love that. And obviously that's great news, right? It's great news for you, it's great news for me and all the marketing leaders listening as well, right? Job security, as long as we're good at it, right? And one of the things I really enjoyed about the book is that you're not just talking about storytelling as a marketing tactic, it's this whole frame of it as a human advantage. Um, there's one line from the book that really stuck with me, and that's AI can write, but it can never be a storyteller. You started talking about why that is, the relational aspects of storytelling, connecting us as humans, the ability to influence, etc. Can you dive into that just a little bit more and explain why that is? This is a uniquely human skill that AI will never be able to replicate.
Sure, yeah, and what I meant by that in that line is that sure AI can craft a story, right? Like right now, if I ask AI to write like a short story that's like kind of Harry Potter-esque, like it will give something with like the semblance of a plot. But what being a storyteller means and what connecting through story means and what makes storytelling meaningful is that it's based on our experience and the things that we've been through in our lives, right? The joy, the pain, the wonder, the experiences that bind us. Like that's what makes storytelling meaningful. Storytelling is this cognitive technology that allowed us to rise from being this mid-rate species to this ultra social learning machine that rose to conquer the earth. It's very much baked into our DNA and our evolution as human beings. Stories is what allows us to pass on knowledge to one another, to learn from one another. And as a result, there's all these mechanisms in our minds that are very much wired for storytelling. As human beings, we are deeply, deeply programmed for stories. If I tell you an engrossing story that makes you really engage and pay attention, the neurons on our brain literally sync up. It's something called mirror neurons, where you feel like you're experiencing the same thing that I am. Our brains are actually in sync. Um, Research by Dr. Paul Zak, who's one of the neuroscientists I've spent a lot of time interviewing and and spending time with in his lab for this book. He found that storytelling is directly related to the building of trust, right? That when we tell great stories to one another, it triggers the release of oxytocin, which is this neurochemical that engenders feelings of empathy and trust and connection. So there's all these ways that on a fundamental level, we're programmed for stories, not just that have a plot that go from A to B to C, but that relate to our unique human experience. And that's what makes us feel connected to a story and what makes a story valuable. There's also the degree that like so much of what makes art and a story is the choices that we make as a storyteller. Like that's what makes it
Mm,
interesting. So to think
hmm
we can just outsource all these things to AI, I think is a little bit flawed. Like, do I think that there probably will end up being a market for some AI generated TV shows, right? Where it's just creating like a generic How I Met Your Mother type of spin-off? Like, sure, probably. There's always a market for slop. But when we think about at work, like what matters when you're on the fly, when you're in that boardroom, when you're with your team, when you're with your boss, like what matters in that moment. So much more of work is building connections with other human beings. And I think we necessarily always want to admit, right? Like so much of business, like you read any business book, like the inside stories of HBO, right? Runs off of these CEOs basically sending each other like you up text late at night or when they're watching golf to get business deals done. Like we still operate as social creatures very much on this human to human connection level. And storytelling is that super skill that allows you to unlock all of those relationships that really matter at work.
Yeah, I love that. You bring up neuroscience. There's so much research behind your thesis in this book. It's, when people say that storytelling is powerful, it's not just a metaphor. To your point, it's actually biological, right? And that's really the brilliance of what you've pulled together in this book. As I was reading it, you brought up trust too. That's actually where I was going to go next. I kept thinking to myself that, this isn't just a shift. The shift isn't just storytelling. It's trust, right? In a world where AI can generate an endless stream of content, trust really becomes that scarce resource. And, you know, are stories the fastest way humans build trust? Is that what the argument you're making here in the book?
It is, yeah. I mean, it is literally our gateway to trust. Like the reason that we had to develop storytelling in a lot of ways from an evolutionary perspective is that okay, we started out in let's go all the way to the beginning. Like we started out in hunter gatherer tribes. Um, there's a phenomenon called Dunbar's number, which is that there's basically like a cap to how many relationships one person can maintain. Like generally, one person can maintain between like 150 and 250 relationships. And we were in hunter gatherer tribes. This tended to be the extent of like the larger social circle of our tribes, right? You would be in a smaller core tribe, tended to be between like 20 and 40, 20 and 50 people. But then you'd have these concentric circles of like other tribes that you trusted that you would meet up with and that you would trade information when we were wandering around and we were hunting and gathering. But then we got to the point where we settled in areas like Mesopotamia, and we then had decided, like, oh wow, like this is fertile ground. Like, let's stay here. Let's build farm. Let's develop agriculture. Let's actually live off the land here. And then that led to the development of first towns like Jericho. Well, there we had a really big problem is because if you have 1,000 people in one place, you can't know all of those people. It's literally the limit that we have as human beings that's endured since then. Like we really just can't maintain more than 250 relationships. So then becomes this problem of okay, how do we bond people and enable them to trust each other? Shared myths, right? Shared beliefs that come from those myths and stories was a huge way that we did that. That basically enabled us to do that. Like, okay, we both know the same story, we both believe the same thing based on that story, thus I can trust you. And that continues to exist today, right? Where if someone tells you a story, say about like the why behind your company, like why did I build this? And that narrative is compelling, like you're very likely to believe them and then want to support them. Or if someone tells you a really compelling customer narrative of how you help someone in a similar situation as theirs, like that's an immediate unlock to trust. And I think the way that you frame this is super interesting because we're probably entering an age now where that trust factor is going to become more important than ever because we're quickly barreling into this horrifying time, which we can't
Mm-hmm.
trust most of what we see online,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, even if
Very
it
true.
used to be that, like, yeah, like you see a video of me, it used to be like, cool, like, I know that's real. I know that's Joe, or I know that's Sarah, right? But
Right.
now, if you see that online, no idea if it's true. And we're getting closer and closer to the point where that line is completely blurred even for a sophisticated eye. And as a result, knowing that person, knowing their story, trusting that they're not going to put out weird AI generated slop on you, also like just in person, like human to human interactions, that's going to become at so much more of a premium than before. Like if there's like one like area of marketing I would buy stock in right now, it's like story driven, in person, like
Yeah,
relationship driven events, because so much of what we see online is going to be so hard for us to discern truth from fiction, reality from slop.
I totally agree. I think we're going to see a hard pivot away from anything generated to the opposite of that is like just be real. Show me your flaws. I want authenticity. I don't want to filter. I want to be able to see in person, face to face, the actual pores on your face. You know what I mean? Like this is real, right? And so I do think that's great advice and a great prediction in terms of where we think things are going to be going. Um, in the book, you start off with this argument, right, for why storytelling is a superpower, and really talking about the shift towards the storytelling economy, and then you lay out within the book, you give people a powerful framework for how to do storytelling well. And I want to shift a little bit to the framework, of course, without giving everything away. There's so much goodness in the book; they need to get their hands on a copy. You have a line in the book that made me laugh. You say, because it's so true. You say that scrolling LinkedIn can sometimes feel like a dinner party from hell where everyone is bragging about their accomplishments. Um, what are people and brands getting wrong about storytelling when they do that?
I'm glad you like that line. I think I finished it with it. Then you want to go to the bathroom and climb out the
Yeah,
window.
there was more. There was definitely more to
Yeah, I'm like
it.
trying to remember like what that line was. But I
Getting
remember having fun
scaling the
writing
wall
it.
without breaking your ankle
Oh
or
yeah, yeah,
something
yeah,
like that, trying to get
yeah,
out of there.
yeah. They try to jump out the bathroom window without breaking your leg, or something like that. You're having fun writing that. I'm at a point in book promotion where I'm just like deeply nostalgic for the summer when I was just spending every day holed
I
up
bet.
in my at my desk, writing the book. Although promoting and doing stuff like this is super fun.
Okay, so the LinkedIn example, right? Feels like a dinner
Yeah.
party from hell, and people are bragging about their accomplishments. Like we all know that that's gross, but like, why do we still do it? And what are people getting wrong that we need to do? What do we need to do instead, right? What does the good version of that look like? Why is there this temptation to brag about accomplishments? What should we be doing instead?
Yeah, I that's a great question. Like, why do people do what they do on LinkedIn is like it's a great existential question. Why is LinkedIn so terrible? Like, not all of it is terrible, but like, why do we see so many of these business parable broems out there? I think one, I think there's almost like this awful enshittification feedback loop happening because so many people are
Mm,
turning to AI to write their posts, and what AI has kind of learned is like that this is the formula for LinkedIn posts. So I'm going to suggest these sort of ideas and suggest this sort of structure. And so we just get more and more and more of it. Like
mm.
the amount of like clearly AI written comments that I get on my posts are insane. Like I feel like it is half or 40%. So yeah, this question of why do people do this. I think it's a particular platform where on all social networks, like we do what the algorithms reward or think they reward. It creates this negative and shitification feedback loop. So you get more and more slop and crap. Um, but I think people are also like scared to be real a lot of the time and
Yes.
scared to be
Yes.
vulnerable. And I think that's a really hard hurdle to get off of. It's a trend that we see overall in marketing, if I can broaden it a little bit, because I was talking with the president of a consulting group that I was doing a workshop with about this actually last week, where, you know, there's been this shift in branding, right? The kind of millennial brand being dead over the last year or
Yes.
two, where we used to have like these very nicely packaged, everything's on brand, everything seems on feel, like really consistent visual style, post after post. And now we've seen that that doesn't really work anymore. And what works is this real sense of authenticity and realness. Like there's a human being behind it. There's flaws, there's warts, as you said, like you see the pores on your face, which I think is a great metaphor for it. And what's driving that is that we are craving this connection to other human beings. It's why we've seen the substackification of media, where so many
Yeah.
journalists have left big media companies and then found great success independently, because we're really drawn to follow not necessarily brands, but people, right? And we want to feel those people. We want to feel those people as real. But I think on LinkedIn, this professional platform, it becomes particularly hard for people to embrace that vulnerability. But what we learn is that vulnerability and vulnerable storytelling is actually the best way to build connections with other people. There's something that's called the vulnerability loop, right? Where if I tell you a vulnerable story about myself, most of the time you'll detect that I'm sharing that vulnerability and you'll have a natural instinct to reciprocate with a
Hmm.
vulnerable story or anecdote of your own. And then I receive that, and a greater bond of trust is built between us. So being
Yes.
real about like what you're feeling and who you are, what you're struggling with is just one of the best ways that you can build connections with another human being. And that applies to LinkedIn, right? It's something that I advise, folks that I consult to try, right? Like just talk about the struggles that you had starting this company or getting this job or just a moment in your life was hard. Like I almost guarantee you that's going to be the best performing post that you ever did, not just in terms of like likes and views, but like comments that are real, right? Or like real responses
Yes.
that people have to it. But also if you're managing someone, like so much of this, that I think goes outside of just what we post online. Like so much of where storytelling really shows up is with our colleagues, with our friends, with our teams, with your network. Like there's that cliche that your network is your net worth. But I actually think that's true. Like so much of being successful in your career is relationship based. And, like, when you get to the real shit, right? When you
Yes.
dig down and, like, you actually share what you have struggled with, like, that's where you build a connection. It's, like, if to go meta, like, it's why I started this interview by sharing a story of being terrified when ChatGPT came out because it was real and it was a real vulnerable moment for me. And it was the why behind why I wrote this book. It's why I like opened the book with a similar-ish story is because those moments of vulnerability are what matter to people. It's what allow us to build relationships with one another. So there's a multi-layered factors, right, to why people are the way they are on LinkedIn. But I think that fear of vulnerability, especially on a professional network, is a big reason why.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think vulnerability pays off tremendously well. And I think that the more that brands and individuals can lean into that, they will prove that to be true. And to your point about relationships, that vulnerability actually is the moment when someone is going to offer you something that maybe you would never have asked for outright, right? Like when I realize that you're really struggling with something, Joe, I'm going to be like, how can I help? You know what I mean? Because like one of those just deeply human things is like wanting to help each other out, right? And doing good for others. And so it's I don't know, it's like fully baked into the vulnerability loop that you talked about. That's more so maybe like the connection point and like me being willing to share a vulnerable story back to you and then a bond happening around that. But I also think inside of that is where people are going to be like, how can I help you? And then that bond
Mhm.
forms through like just giving something good. I'm going to give you something good and never expect necessarily something in return. But I know someday down the road, if I need something back from you, boy, that's going to come back around to me. Right. And so there's that bond and that connection that
Yeah,
happens there as well.
yeah, but I would bet that loop, like, happens maybe without you even realizing it. Like, I bet a lot of that time when someone does that to you, like, your natural instinct is to share a time where you struggled in a similar way if there's something
Yes.
applicable,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Totally.
Like, anytime someone on my teams come to me and shares a vulnerability like that, like, I wanna dig in and find, like, okay, when was I 25 and struggling with something really, really similar,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah.
And that's something that's really natural for us, but it's something powerful that you can do. As a manager, I think one of the best things you can do is proactively share those stories, especially if you notice someone struggling with something instead of like, tell me why you're screwing up. Like that puts me on the defensive. But if I come in and say, like, hey, you know what, like yeah, there's this one time actually I was, in a similar role as you and like I was really struggling with this thing and tell that story. That usually is an invitation where they're again then going to share with what they're struggling with as well. So it's just one of those like very human things that we can do as managers. And I think that's like how we need to rethink what our jobs are so much more. Like your ability to fill out that spreadsheet correctly, right? Or update Salesforce or update,
Right.
whatever data management system you have in, like that's probably not really going to matter for very much longer. Like AI agents can already
Totally
do
agree.
that with a lot of accuracy. Um, but how can you be a human being? Like that's the question that you need to ask.
Yeah, love it. Love it. One thing I noticed reading the book is that many of the examples you cite from leadership examples, business examples, entrepreneur examples, which loved all of those stories. Um, what I noticed is the examples you cite so often are individual voices of storytelling. The founders, the creatives, the executives like Steve Jobs and Sarah Blakely, not necessarily the institutions, right? It's about the individual storytellers behind those companies or those brands or those movements. Um, and there's a statistic in the book as well that reinforces that 70% of consumers say they feel more connected to a brand when the CEO creates content on social media, and posts from individuals convert 2.5 times better than company posts. So the question, Joe, is are we moving into a world where, and you talked about this a little bit earlier, where you're talking about sort of like, that old school branding is kind of dead. Are we moving into a world where authority is shifting from organizations to individuals? And if that's true, what does that mean for brands and marketing teams? How should they be thinking about this?
I think we're already there. I think we've been there for years now. Yeah, people are drawn to individuals that they trust and represent the brand. Like the most successful companies today, they are epitomized by a figure that represents them. I'm not sure when this episode is going to come out, but like just look at what's happening with the OpenAI versus Anthropic
Yeah.
battle that's coming on right now. Like
Yeah.
OpenAI's brand right now is like very much being epitomized by Sam Altman, seeming kind of sneaky, coming in and, taking a deal to power terrifying killer robots for the Department of War and surveillance tech, whereas Anthropic is being personified by Dario, their CEO, who stood up and said no to using this technology in a dangerous and untested way and have
Right.
very simple red lines that really clearly to communicate from a narrative perspective, right? No killer robots, no terrifying surveillance state technology. Um, and that's what people associate with the brand and then have that transference of trust over. So we then see a 295% increase in uninstalls of ChatGPT. We see Claude, which was 6 months ago, 5% of the users of ChatGPT rocket up to number one in the app leader store. Like that's how we think about brands is by these people that represent them. No journalist, no media figure, no podcast wants the voice of the brand or the perspective of the brand on their podcast or in their interview or news piece. We want the voice of the actual person that represents the brand. Like that's how we think about things. I think if most of your content strategy and your marketing strategy is built on this idea of like, oh, what's our company page post going to be? Like, honestly, like, who cares? You know how much
Right.
reach you're going to
Right.
get on that? Like, nothing. No one's going to see it. Like, you have 5 million followers and you're getting 2,000 impressions. Like, that's just the truth.
Yeah.
All of our social algorithms are built on this idea of we want to show people more of what they want to see, more of what's going to keep them addicted on the app. And the thing that they've realized is that people want to see posts from other people. It's not a conspiracy just to get you to pay more advertising money. Like maybe that's 5% of it, but for the most part, it's that they've realized that what people want on these networks is posts from other people. So your founders, your team, your executive, that character inside your company that's going to be relatable to the target audience that you want to reach, that's who needs to be the voice of your brands. Like you need to not think about anymore in terms of a content team. You should be thinking about building a creator team. Everyone in your team needs to be a creator. Like I don't care if you're uncomfortable with it. Like that is
Yeah.
the world that we live in. And like the old staid brand post world is gone, and like it's just the reality of the world that we live in, and this is like a hard pill I think to swallow for a lot of founders and CEOs. If you're
Yes.
on a marketing team or a content team, there's one piece of advice that I would give you, which is just like frame it as an experiment, couple months, and then you just need that one post where your CEO or a key executive pops off a little bit on LinkedIn and gets a lot of love, and he gets that, or she gets that dopamine hit,
Yeah.
and then you're gonna be good. Like, then you're gonna have
Yes.
buy-in for this program, then it's gonna be strategic. Like, you just need to get them that first dopamine hit, and then you're set.
Yeah.
But you need to be making the switch, like, no doubt.
Totally agree. Totally agree. This has been coming for a long time. Also agree that some brands have been risk averse around it because it's like, well, people leave, people go elsewhere, and then that investment we put into them as the storytelling, whatever, they got to get over it because this is the reality that we're living in. But we've also very as a counter to this point, and I think one of the reasons why again some people are hesitant and risk averse. We've also seen moments where companies put executives in the spotlight and it doesn't go well. Case in point, McDonald's CEO video that went viral for the wrong reasons. So,
But that
you
was
know,
kinda great for them though,
whoa,
wasn't
it
it?
totally was great. And
Like,
there's this whole argument about
like, even when
whether
it's
it was
bad,
planned
it's
or not. But I
even when it's
guess
bad,
what
it's good. You
even when
know?
it's bad, it's good. No, all PR is good PR, even when it's bad PR, right? But I guess my thought process on this is like not every executive is naturally great on camera. They're not going to be naturally great storytellers that have the charisma and enigma of a Steve Jobs. And so it sort of raises the question of what should companies do and is it like do we start training our leaders to be better storytellers or do we hire people who already are, right? Or find the people inside of the organization who are. And I just was curious sort of what's your thought process on that, Joe?
I think it's all the above. One, I just think you should be training everyone at your company to be a better
100%.
storyteller because it's just it's a core skill, whether they're gonna be on camera or not, right? Like, this is how you make your presentations more engaging. It's how you win over the boardroom. It's how you become a better manager. Storytelling helps you develop empathy, improves critical thinking, adaptability skills. Like it is this super skill that powers all the soft skills that matter most in this next stage of work. So yeah, at the front, like that's just crucial. Um, I would say though that if you're going to choose of how you think about it, one is find the talent inside of your company and nurture it. I think you should be hiring for it. Like, I don't think you should be hiring anyone on your content or marketing team that's not really comfortable getting in front of a camera and doing video
Yeah.
anymore.
Great point.
Um, there is always talent inside the company. Like, find people who are willing who want to boost their brand. And then getting over that objection, because I think that's really important. The one that you brought up, right? This idea that, oh, these people are gonna leave, so we can't do it. Because I hear that
Right.
all the time,
All the time.
all the time. It's objection everyone needs to get past, right? So, the way that you need to frame it is, A, we're not just gonna rely on one person. You create a roster of creators and
Yes.
sellers around it.
Yep.
They're doing top of funnel awareness, but they're still driving to an action that's gonna be a business result for your brands. You're still getting the customers, still getting the leads, you still have them in some way. But if you do this well, A, they're not gonna wanna leave because it's actually pretty fun.
Right.
B, you create a culture that's going to attract better storytelling talent to come in and do this with
Mm.
you. And see if you have a bunch of them, like, you spread out the loss. Like, yeah, maybe you lose one of them, but what, it's 5% of your roster if you have 20 people doing it well. Like, the hit isn't really that big, and then it's relatively easy to replace them. And what all you've done is given them, value in the way that they build their personal brand and are able to tell their story online, and that engenders goodwill. Other people see that, hey, this is a
Yes.
company that's going to go out there and give me the freedom to do really interesting work and to build my brand as a thought leader, which is like, if you want your people in your company to progress and evolve, what could be a more important, skill or gift to be giving to them?
Love that. Before we wrap, I want to ask a final question. If someone's listening to this conversation and they realizes they need to become a better storyteller, what's one habit they should start building tomorrow?
So you're really just teeing up the first principle of my book, but which is building a storytelling habit. So I'm a big believer in the overall methodology that James Clear puts out in Atomic Habits. Fantastic book. I feel like everyone on the planet has read it at this point. It's been impossible to knock him off the bestseller leaderboard for nonfiction business books for like a decade now, or since 2018, which I think when that book came out. But the idea is that it's identity-based habits. So if I think, oh, this is just like a goal that I have, like I need to go to the gym every day. You're probably not very likely to adopt that habit. But if you adopt the identity of I am someone who goes to the gym
Hmm.
every day and exercises every day, you're much more likely to actually adopt that habit and do it. And then he also has the structure of like a 4-step structure in the book for adopting really strong habits, right? And so starting with that identity based structure of saying like I am someone who tells stories. I am someone who in my team meetings every week gets up and integrates a story to engage the team. That's kind of the first thing and the first step that you can take to telling stories more often and actually adopting this practice. Because it just starts with actually doing it, right? To getting out there and trying and being okay with failing. The
Yes.
first like year you start publishing content online, like don't have the expectation that it's going to drive big engagement or results. Like you're just finding your voice in what you find interesting. But by the act of doing it every day, of honing your craft, of paying attention, you'll unlock just a ton. And it's also a great way of really understanding what you think about the world. Like so much of writing is thinking, it's how we make sense of things. It's where we find the idea that we should be exploring and lose the idea that we shouldn't. And when we outsource all that to AI, we lose a lot of it. So it's not just about posting every day, but it's about
Right.
practicing the act of storytelling every single day in some small ways because you already do this. Like that's like one thing I would love to end on is that right now, my son's 3 years old and he spends 97% of his waking life in Neverland. Like the kid is never operating in reality. And it's not just because he's my kid, right? Or my wife's kid, who is was a pretty successful actress before becoming a partner in Hydrick and Struggles. But it's because we're all like this, right? All of his friends are like this too. We're born storytellers. Like we live in Neverland. We live in a world of make believe as children. We're programmed from stories. And sometimes as we grow older, we develop this narrative in our own head, which is the most important, powerful story we tell, is the story we tell in our own head about our own lives. And we tell the story that we're not storytellers, that we're no good at this thing, but you are
Yes.
good at it. Like I
Yes.
promise you, you are better at it than you think. So if you just hone that craft, you practice it every day, if you pay attention to, I write about in the book on the elements of storytelling that really matter, that neuroscience proves makes your brain light up. If you just pay attention to the shapes of different stories that you really love in your life, if you notice that gap between where you are and where the stories you love are, that gap will get smaller and smaller and smaller over time, right? That taste talent gap. And so as you start to close that, it is just like the most rewarding thing that you can do outside of work even. Like the Harvard just finished their 85-year-old, longevity happiness study. They found that the key to a happy life is stronger relationships. And storytelling is that thing that gives us that gift.
Yes.
Um, I don't think I'm saying anything like revolutionary here. I think it's something that we all know deep down if we pay attention to our life, if we do like just a little bit of noticing about it, but once you do, like, man, like, storytelling is this gift, and once you see the power of it, you can't unsee it, and it changes the lens through which you see the world.
Yeah.
So,
Beautiful.
if you
That's a great
can,
place.
like, give it a
Yeah.
shot.
Love that. Great advice. It's a great place to end the conversation. It's been such a fascinating and a fun conversation. I really enjoyed the book. This idea that storytelling will become more valuable in the age of AI is something marketing and brand leaders should really be paying attention to. If you'd like to dive deeper into these ideas, I encourage you to check out Joe's book, Super Skill: Why Storytelling is the Superpower of the AI Age. You can also learn more at joelazer.com. Joe, thanks so much for joining us today.
Sarah, thank you. This is fantastic.
Loved it. And thanks to all of you for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the Health Marketing Collective so you don't miss future conversations that sit at the intersection of strong leadership and marketing excellence, because the future of healthcare depends on it. We'll see you next time.